Nex-Tech University, another edition of the fastest 16 minutes in technology, hosted today by myself, Shannon Rothschild, and with me is Olga Dietrich. We are here to talk about workplace cybersecurity, what you need to know and why you need to know it. So without any further ado, we're going to get started because we only have 16 minutes, and this is a very important topic that we want you to learn about today with us. And I'm trying to get the slides to advance. There it goes. Cybercrime. Real quick, just want to go over what we in the industry define as cybercrime as related to cybersecurity. The big thing today is the theft of personal data. It happens a lot, and it's going to become more and more prevalent. But cybercrime doesn't just include the theft of personal data. It also includes copyright infringement, as well as fraud. Fraud's a big thing too, and we're going to talk about that as well, along with the theft of personal data. But we also will include child pornography with that. Obviously, that's a highly illegal activity that goes on a lot. Cyber stalking and cyber bullying. These are all things that are considered cybercrime and things that can affect you and your business that you want to be aware of and help protect yourself against. How does it get to us? Big thing I want everybody to remember today as we end this session in 16 minutes is that typically this type of activity requires some type of user intervention before it can occur. Meaning that somebody on one end or the other has to do something. And when I say one and the other, I mean somebody who sends you the information has to do something on their end in order for theft or fraud to occur. But primarily, it's the receiver of the information that has to do something. Typically, we hear of malware, spyware, viruses, trojans, worms. What does all this mean? There is software that is written, code that is written to deliberately steal or destroy information on either a PC or a network server. It's purposely written and it's purposely delivered with the hopes of stealing information. And like I said before, it requires user intervention before it can occur. So perhaps you get an email, which I'm going to show you in a second, an example of how that works, that requires you to do something before the nasties are released on your PC or on your data network that can then cause issues for you. And notice I have two arrows up there twice with the same word in them. That's not a mistake, that's on purpose, and that's ransomware. Ransomware has been touted recently, as recently as this week, to become a billion-dollar industry in 2016, meaning that the bad guys will be able to produce up to $1 billion using ransomware, which I can't fathom.
Yeah, that's a huge number.
A lot of money. The point is, it works, but it's all preventable with proper understanding and proper knowledge on the end user. And so we want to talk a lot about that this morning as we continue here. So a lot of us like to go fishing, I myself included, take my kids fishing, and you may have heard the term phishing, P-H-I-S-I-N-G. It's not phishing, but it is phishing because the bad guys are fishing for your information. And what they do is they create, either via an email or via a link on a Facebook page or some type of social media that entices you to do something. And when you do something, it unleashes the nasties on your computer and cause you all kinds of problems. This morning I'm going to show you an example of what one of those phishing emails look like. If you were to look at the details of this email, I want to go through this rather in depth because it's very, very important. This is what's known as a ransomware email, and there are a lot of key indicators that you as an end user or your employees should know about and be looking for in order to prevent ransomware from being deployed on your network or any other type of virus or worm.
And so Shannon, this is actually a live email, like an actual example, right? This is not something that we just put together. This is something that we actually received.
That's why we see the black on the email, because this is a real live email that was received, as you can see, March 16th, I believe it says, March 14th of 2016, by an end user, a real end user. So what you see here is that, first of all, I want to go over what we need to look at on this email. Who's it from, right? Well, it says admin at, and then it was the actual domain name of this company. This is not a real email address, but yet the bad guys make it look like one because they're using the actual domain name of that company. So the end users, if they would have been vigilant and looked and realized that that's not a real email address. Secondly, it has an attachment to it that is an attachment that is not commonly used in today's email. Used to be 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, but now it's not because of the advent of broadband connectivity. We don't need to use zip files, ZIP files, and that's what this is a zip file. But if you look there in the details of the email, I want you to drop down to about the 3rd paragraph where it says email messages may contain viruses. Look at the last sentence in that email. Henry Sheen is not liable for any loss or damage arising from this message. Another key indicator there is that Henry Sheen does not work at this company. And if the person receiving this email would have read the details, they would have realized that, hey, I don't recognize this email address. It's not real. I wasn't expecting this email, and I have no idea who Henry Sheen is. But the person was in a hurry. They saw the email, they saw the attachment, thought it was something really for them, so they double-clicked on that zip file. And within 15 seconds after double-clicking on that, there was an executable file inside the zip file that went out to the internet, to a web page, grabbed the malicious code, brought it back down to that person's machine, and instantly all their files were encrypted.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah.
To think that that's how quickly it happens.
Yeah, and it didn't take any time at all. But fortunately for this particular end user, this has a happy ending, and we'll talk about that happy ending here in a minute. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Olga, and she's going to go over some recommendations, some quick recommendations for your business today and what we should be thinking about and needing to be doing within our businesses.
So yeah, we talked about all the scary stuff that's out there, and there are actually things that you can do today to implement in your business to make sure that you do keep yourself as protected as possible. One thing to kind of keep in mind is you're never going to be 100% secure and safe because that's just the nature of the thing. Malware changes and develops and evolves just as much as security does. So really the best you can do is just keep your network as secure as possible and make it as difficult as possible for anybody to hack in. So this way, they're really just going to look for someone who's easier to hack. That's just the reality of it. So there are a couple of steps that are all very common sense, and I think a lot of us have heard, but I think we're still all lacking in really implementing them and doing them on a day-to-day basis. So we want to touch on a couple of those. The first one, passwords. Hard passwords and change them up and guard them. Again, that seems so obvious, but the majority of us don't really enforce it. And as important as having difficult passwords and changing them, it's really in your business having a policy that strictly lines out how often you require your employees to change their password and then enforce that policy and make them actually change it. Another good option is to use something like a password manager. Dashlane is one example where it actually creates the password for you. It auto-generates a random password. And then also two-way authentication. So you don't just use one password, but then maybe a password and a PIN number or something like that that can help protect your passwords. So the next thing we're going to talk about is use separate PCs for your home and your business. Again, seems like a no-brainer, but in the convenience of times, I think a lot of us just go and Google things very quickly on their business PC. Oh, I'm just going to look this up real quick. But a lot of times, all those private browsing can compromise when you click on a link that a friend sends you or something like that. You think it's a funny cat video or something like that, and then it's not. It actually compromises your business PC. So make sure your employees are aware of that. The next thing is USB drives. Everybody has a million USB drives laying around, and you just find one, and you're like, oh, I haven't seen that in forever. I'm just going to plug in and see what's on there. Be vigilant about that, because if you don't know where it's been or where it comes from, if somebody just kind of handed it to you, don't just plug it in. If you absolutely need to find out what's on that USB drive, try to maybe have if you have another unit, another PC that's maybe not hooked up to your company network, or if you can run it in safe mode or something like that, but don't just plug in any USB drive. The next thing that's on there is know before you go. Did you ask for it? And Shannon mentioned that, especially when you get emails. I got an email that was exactly like the one that you showed. It had even our Nex-Tech domain, and it was pretty scary. But I was like, well, I don't recognize the email address or the person, and I wasn't expecting an invoice or anything. So I thankfully double-checked and didn't click on it. But is it really something you were expecting? Did you actually order something online that they should be sending you tracking on? Did you buy anything? Are you actually expecting something before you click on it? Okay, then the next thing, make sure that you keep your system secure. So antivirus, spam, firewall, make sure you keep all those services up to date. That is really, really crucial. If those firewall services expire, it's really just a box that's sitting there. So make sure you keep those services up to date and you renew them before your expiration date, because even if you go a couple days without it, you will notice the difference. Okay, so further on, that kind of goes along with the firewall and antivirus services. Security patches. A lot of times when we sell a PC, we offer patching services, and customers ask us, what is that? Why do I need that? Really what patching means is just making sure that your software is the most updated version. And you get those annoying pop-ups saying there's a new update, and people just click away and just like, oh, I don't have time for this.
Ignore.
Yes, make time for them, because they are crucial. They basically make sure that the software manufacturer closes loopholes that they found in the software. If you don't, it really makes your PC and your software more vulnerable for any new malware.
Exactly.
Okay, the next one will be secure wireless network. Make sure you
War driving, baby. We all love war driving, right?
That's right. Make sure that you put a password on it. If you have a business where you offer guests or customers to use your network, if you have the opportunity, maybe make a separate network partition for them so they don't use your company network, things like that. And again, if you think that it's been compromised, change your password. And that doesn't only go for your business, that also goes for your home network. Back up your data. Make sure that you have a backup system in place, and test it every once in a while to make sure it actually backs it up.
So I mentioned the story of the email had a happy ending, right?
Yes.
So here's what happened. The data was encrypted. It was ransomware. And the person who wrote this code demanded, I think it was only $500. It wasn't that much. The bad guys have figured out that it's easier to get $500 than it is to get $10,000, and so they do it in small amounts. Well, obviously this company didn't want to pay to get their files back. It was silly, right? So fortunately, Nex-Tech manages the backup for this company as well, and we have our what we call continuous data protection in place, meaning that every 30 minutes that person's data was backed up. And there is an image of all of that person's data on the backup appliance sitting there if need be. So that person, even though all their files were encrypted, only had changes to different spreadsheets that was not recovered. It took us a couple hours to make it happen, but all we had to do was go delete all the nasty stuff that was encrypted and then bring the image back from the backup from 30 minutes ago, and that person was back up and running and didn't lose any data.
Yeah.
So that person went from losing everything to losing nothing, all because there was a backup in place.
Your backup is basically your lifeline if you do get compromised.
Right, exactly. And I tell folks, if there's something out there that if you woke up tomorrow and you didn't have because it wasn't backed up, how would you feel? Right?
Right. And what would that mean for your business?
Yes.
Correct.
Exactly.
That's right. All right. The next thing here is using multiple email accounts. We talked about this earlier. It's kind of like putting all your eggs in a basket. Don't do that. especially when we're talking personal and business. Don't, if you have one that you use for your Amazon purchases, use a separate email for that, and, separate email for your business accounts. And then, of course, limit personal information on social media. We've heard that a million times from everyone, but people still put themselves wide open out there. And the other thing about it is that people kind of tend to forget is check your security settings, because you can still post on social media, but make it so that not everybody is able to see everything.
Definitely. You can limit who can see what. It's important that you do that.
Exactly, especially when you also talk to your children and your teenagers. They like to forget about that aspect. Yeah. And then the last thing we have on there is beware of social engineering. And for those of you who don't know what social engineering is, it's basically when somebody specifically targets you by almost tricking the company. That could be somebody coming in and saying they have to perform some maintenance or something like that, and posing as an employee, and actually gaining access to information that they're not privy to. That's getting more and more popular out there.
Another form of social engineering is somebody will pretend to be you on Facebook. It's not really you.
Yes. Yeah. Or over the phone.
Yep. So you just got to be careful about who you talk to and what information you give out, and know who you're talking to. Again, know before you go, right?
That's right. And don't just trust them just because they say they're someone.
Right.
So.
Last thing here is you can read this screen. In 2015, most everybody thought they were doing everything right that had some type of breach. All right? The point is that you need to approach and think about security as being an end-to-end issue. That from the creation and storage of your data to its use and to every point in between needs to have security attached to it. Your security is only as good as the weakest point in the whole system. So think about your folks that are using your network. Think about how your network data is stored. Think about how it's disseminated, those sorts of things. That you're only as good as your weakest link, so to speak.
That's right, and that pretty much concludes it for today. Thank you very much for tuning in. And do we have any questions, I guess?
Actually, we'll need to probably talk a little bit longer. We're on a delay, and so you guys can talk for like 30 minutes.
Okay.
I remind people that there is an open chat window if you want to ask a question.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, of course. Absolutely. So you were actually talking about earlier some of the examples that we've heard, and we actually read one today. We just read about a new virus that's out there, right?
Right.
That was breaching banks, and specifically targeting banks, which I thought was really, really scary, and specifically targeting end users.
The name is the name of a new virus out there, combining two really successful viruses from the past, and it's even more persistent, it's even better at what it does. What happens is this particular virus requires you to either open an email attachment or click on a link web page, and it downloads information to your machine that you don't even know what's there, and then it's logging all your keystrokes. When it logs your keystrokes, it gets your passwords, and it can log into your bank account pretending to be you. Again, social engineering, so to speak. And
it's kind of scary because it's dormant until it recognizes that you log into a bank account, and then that's the crucial information they're going to need. So it might sit on your PC, and you might not have a clue that it's there for a while until it has that final information that they need, and that's when they're going to get you.
And this just came out in April, this month, and reiterates the point of why it's important to make sure that your antivirus and your security patches and those sorts of things are always up to date. Yeah. Because as soon as this vulnerability was recognized a couple weeks ago, all the manufacturers then put out their updates to protect against that particular vulnerability. So another reason why it's important to keep things up to date.
Yeah. So any questions? Okay, sounds like we're good. Again, thank you so much for tuning in to our fastest 16 minutes, and we hope to see you soon. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to Nex-Tech and to Shannon or me anytime. Thank you.
And be vigilant.
That's right.
Have a great day, everybody.